Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 1947, Senator Arthur Vandenberg stated that politics stop at the water's edge. What that meant was that partisan infighting and attacks should cease when they compromise America's role in missions abroad. Indeed, when they compromise the safety and security of Americans abroad as well. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, I sat in a Homeland Security Committee and heard over 24 references from my esteemed colleagues across the aisle to a Muslim ban. When President Obama expanded its own screening for refugees from majority Muslim nations, he said it was because of, quote, the growing threat of foreign terrorist fighters, and nary a peep was heard. Our colleagues across the aisle said this Muslim ban will endanger Americans and serve as a recruiting tool to ISIS. Mr. Speaker, I agree, except there is no Muslim ban. Talk of a Muslim ban makes Americans less safe at home. True. It makes Americans less safe abroad. True. And if politics stop at the water's edge and there is no Muslim ban, then why use partisan politics to perpetrate falsehoods that do just those very things? Let's look at the facts. Of the 2.3 billion Muslims on the planet Earth, 11% live in the countries named in Mr. Trump's executive order. 0.9% live in Syria, a single nation pulled out for heightened scrutiny. The duration of the heightened scrutiny held to the Syrian refugee population is 1/2 that of the same action taken by Mr. Trump's predecessor, President Obama, as it related to Iraqis. 2011, when nary a peep was heard, because politics are supposed to stop at the water's edge. And we hear questions, does the president have a constitutional right to do this? And I say no, he has a constitutional duty to do this. We look at Article 2 and see the clear and present danger clause. We hear the language of the Obama administration speaking of growing terrorist threats from abroad. We see in Article 2 and then the oath that the president takes that it is his duty to protect Americans from all threats, all enemies, our Constitution and our citizens, foreign and domestic. So what we know is that the executive order affects a scant 7 of well over 50 majority Muslim nations. There is no religious test because it also affects millions of Christians living in these nations. It affects about 11% of the global Muslim population. There are exceptions granted. We know that ISIS is using the refugee system to infiltrate Western nations. We know that first or second generation radical Islamists have killed over 70 Americans since Boston and wounded over 300 on U.S. soil. We know that just over a month ago, a dozen innocent individuals at a Christmas market in Berlin were murdered and 50 more injured by a refugee. And we know that the fallacious concept of a Muslim ban inflames and enrages our enemies and serves as a recruiting tool. So the question then becomes, why do some members of this esteemed body continue to perpetuate what is willful ignorance at best and a falsehood at worst? Why say there is a Muslim ban when there is not? Mr. Speaker, if politics is at the water's edge, then members won't play loose with the facts to score political points. Members won't advance a false narrative that endangers Americans. Members will support this president as they did the last president as he seeks to discharge his duty to defend the United States, its citizens, and our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And with that, I yield back.